Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Ladies, understand something. The top end of a woman's weight is 145 pounds. Okay. My mother's 5'9", and she was 145 pounds until she was 50. That's the top end of your weight, because there should be about a 40-pound difference between you and men.
Basically, if the guy is rich, what ends up happening is the lawyer contacts the person and be like, hey, you know, your name gonna be all in the paper, so you might as well just settle out of court.
I can recognize talent. Even if I don't agree with the politics, a lot of the politics that was underlying in the show and some of the sentiments he was trying to share, I recognize artistry when an artist is present.
Yes, this is the definition of absolutely cooked. We'll never go back and take a look at her bad decision and take accountability for any of that.
Because there is powerful people in the industry, somehow there is a different law that applies to them. And I agree with that assessment.
Good evening and blessings. Welcome to another episode of Assembly of Excellence. You already know the vibes. I am your host for this evening. Deepentropy, last of a writer's creed. Shout out to my poets, my writers, my artists, panels from the past and the future. Salutes to you, much love. I hope all is well. Wednesday's right around the corner. I don't know about you. I'm just grateful to see another day. I'm looking forward to this conversation. And I wanted to switch it up a little bit, you know. We talk about so much up here, and this one, it hits different, just like the rest of them. But it's something that I don't know necessarily if we really reevaluate on a personal level, especially being as how when we wake up and go to bed, we do that by ourselves. So you might be dealing with things personally or externally, and it could be very weighing, very heavy on you. And I don't know. It's something that I've kind of meditated on, and I figured, why not get touched down on this one? I do have Jason and Sydney in the building. This should be especially interesting because I know it's going to be some pursuits on this. That's going to be a lot. Do solid. Let me bring this up on the screen real quick. Repost, share, let the people know that we are live. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, don't hesitate to comment. We respond and reply to everybody. That said, I'm slow this or delay it anymore. Let me go ahead and bring everybody. Make sure y'all go show them love. Yeah, let's jump into it. Sydney, Jason, what's up? Hold on a second.
It's good to be back.
There we go.
Welcome back from your vacation.
Why, thank you, thank you. By the way, Mel, loving the new studio. Looks great.
Right on, right on. How's everything, man? Did you enjoy yourself?
Indeed, I did. Hey, cutie.
Appreciate it, appreciate it. Had to check the phone, you know what I'm saying? That's good, that's good.
Indeed.
How
was your guys' week last week?
Danny, before we jump into this thing that I want to say before we any further, because well, as far as I'm concerned, it was pretty cool. There was a lot going on, a lot of conversations. Life is life, you know. Actually, my aunt just passed away last week, so we're preparing for a funeral coming up. But outside of that, I have no complaints. I'm just grateful to still be here, present with the people. I get to do what I love to do. I'm not focused too much on anything outside of that. I celebrate her life just like I would celebrate anybody else's, you know. But we here, you know.
Indeed, we are.
We're just curious, where did you go for vacation?
Appreciate it. So
I
went go ahead and jump straight into it.
I just went to pick up my stepson from college. Actually, he was getting done with university for this year and moving back. So his mom and his dad take turns. It was our turn this time, so we spent a couple extra days out there. Little college town called Saskatoon in Saskatchewan. So yeah, that's what we did.
I'm only familiar with that because my parents went to that area way back in like the 80s, I think, for a trip. So I know, and my mom's from New England. She grew up like Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, that area. So she knows Canada pretty well in that area.
That's my stomping ground. I was raised for over 30 years in Massachusetts and spent another few years in New Hampshire. Both of my parents are actually from Vermont.
So you'd get why she says we're from. Was it Worcester and Worcester?
Worcester? Yep. Yep.
She's like, that's
and
like
no one else. If you're outside of New England, no one else can pronounce it. Worcestershire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just don't hurt yourself. You're gonna have a stroke.
Yeah, Worcestershire.
Yeah.
Worcestershire.
Yeah. So I did spend about a year in Worcester. Not the greatest place to live, but yeah, it wasn't that bad. But
cool.
Yeah, I spent most of my life in that area.
Awesome. Yeah, I know my mom said I think they kind of lived near Providence, but I know they also lived in Vermont and towards Maine for a little bit too.
Moved around, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if they lived near Providence, then that would have been South Shore, Massachusetts. And then by Maine, that would have been northeastern New Hampshire,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Vermont. Yeah, so it's the Salisbury area, somewhere around that area, Portsmouth. And then, so you bring back memories.
Oh yeah, she still talks about the trees to this day, and she hasn't lived there since the 70s. So. And the lobster, of course.
Oh, you can't go there and not get the lobster. Lobster rolls are one of the most prominent things. That and clam chowder are two of the staples.
Which is not creamy; it's clear.
When made correctly, yes. If it's New England clam chowder, it's going to be clear. If it's creamy,
I also remember being flabbergasted that the scallops were like this big, because in California they're like little bitty things, and so they brought out the steamed scallops, and it was literally as big as a cupcake. And I was 12. I was like, who can even eat that? Oh my god! But yeah,
yep,
it's a cool place.
It is. It absolutely is. Whenever I can go back there, I do.
Well, hell, I might have to make me a visit one of these days if I ever get a chance to take me a real vacation, not no 1 day, 2 days off, because that don't count. And I just had that conversation with somebody at work, and I'm saying, because he asked me, "Do you take off?" And I'm like, "Well, I won't consider it a vacation unless I actually leave the state and I actually go somewhere, like I get on a plane or I take an actual road trip. Otherwise, it don't really count. You're just at home lounging around." So, but I could never pronounce that word, Worcester. I struggle with that.
Yeah, it's really simple. Worcester. It's 2 syllables. Don't let the 2 C's fool you.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about what it means to have a true interpersonal relationship with yourself. What it means to actually love yourself. What does it look like when it's reflected externally? What it means to actually truly invest in yourself, pour into yourself, so that when you're out here dealing with the world and all the things that come with it, whether it be in relationships or it be work related, you're so in tune with yourself that you don't process things the same way that most people do, right? Because we notice a lot of folks don't know how to regulate their emotions. We've already talked about that a whole lot. They get overly sensitive over post. They don't know how to deal with unprofessionalism, etc., etc. They have a hard time taking rejection or breaking ties with people. So I just wanted to get y'all thoughts and your perspective on it and what it means to you and what it looks like to you. Sydney, if you have anything that you would like to kick us off with, the floor is yours.
Just to clarify, so you mean our understanding of ourselves and how we portray ourselves to others, or like how people perceive us and whether that's like accurate compared to like what we're portraying?
So, you know, a lot of what I've noticed, 2 things. Clout is something that people chase. And I always wonder why. What is it about it that you're so obsessed with?
Okay.
Why when you post something, or when you dress a certain way, or you do certain things, why are you seeking that attention? And then it always comes back to me that something inside of you is missing. I think that's more or less why do you have to go out for what should already be in you? And how do you differentiate it from the outside source? Because you can chase validation all you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the type of intimacy or the type of love that you should be holding on to.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So one of the main reasons that so when somebody's showing that they're chasing something externally, whether it's an addictive substance, whether it's an addiction to chasing knowledge, an addiction to chasing people, an addiction to chasing clout, as you said, it's because they're missing something. Oftentimes we seek things outside ourselves because we're either uncomfortable being inside ourselves, or which I guess it's kind of under the same umbrella, we're experiencing difficult feelings that are really uncomfortable for us to face, and so we're trying to avoid something within ourselves. That's typically why, like, you see addictions forming after a traumatic event, because people are trying to push that under the surface and hide it with other things such as shopping, drinking, drugs, etc. There's also people that will seek community, belonging, the sensation of being validated and cared about, and people want to hear what you have to say. People want you to be included. That whole aspect of you belong somewhere. That's another reason why people will seek things out externally, sometimes to excess. That's why people overuse social media. That's why people might overdo their attention to themselves, like their makeup, their clothing, their purses, their shoes, whatever, their collections, how they make their house, how they present themselves to the world. If they had a broken connection with their parents, if they had a messed up connection with their family, their siblings, or a relationship that was very important to them, they might start also seeking outside of themselves to fulfill that broken or missing need for validation. And in a lot of these cases, it's because they never truly got a chance to understand themselves, understand who they are, what makes them important to themselves, what they themselves love, what schedules work with their internal sense of rhythm, their internal sense of self. Those are the people that seek outwardly. If you truly know what your personality is, what your rhythms are, what your systems need, what your body needs, without the external noise of other people and what they're telling you, what they're selling you, what they're trying to convince you that you should use and should need and whatever, you'll find that you need surprisingly little. You can see this with a lot of highly intelligent or wise or worldly. We have a menagerie in the room right now. The people that are extremely intelligent and the only word I can think of is wise, but I feel like I want another word. Anyway, wise, like sage type people, they are content with very, very little because they understand what truly matters. They understand their purpose. They understand their position in life. They understand that all of these external things that you can have, sure, they make life better. They make life more enjoyable in the moment, but they don't make life better perpetually. Like, if you continue chasing these things, you will only continue to be more and more unhappy. And so that, I think, is where the sense of true intimacy with the self, true understanding of the self comes from. It takes work. You have to sit with yourself. You have to be in your own silence. You have to understand your own feelings, your sensations, your emotions, where they come from. You have to understand your past and how that connects with the feelings that you have today. You have to understand how the things that you put into yourself affect all of those things, because the food we eat, the chemicals that we put on our bodies and in the air and on our clothes and our, like, everything around us also has an impact on our body. And so you really need to have a very deep understanding. And people that are it's kind of it's a cycle, because it really feeds back into each other, where if you have this awareness, you'll start to consume less, which will make you start to understand more and start to see more that these things don't matter, that you don't need these things, that you don't, all of these things that people are selling you won't actually get you the picture that they're portraying to you. So it's really a combination of consciousness, of self-consciousness of the world around you and what actually is, and a deep understanding of your psychology and how it contributes to, or how it's related to what you need in yourself to be genuinely happy, and not what's the word, like temporarily happy for just based on these cheap pleasures, essentially.
So I'm just going to go back to my book because I have a pretty good explanation of this. So the idea of personal happiness and the happiness that we create within ourselves, it has to do more with the way in which you there's two different things that are going on here. So it's not personal interaction. That's not a thing. Interaction is what you have, or interpersonal interaction is what you have with another person. That is when who you are is interacting with another person in the ways in which you experience each other. The intrapersonal is the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs we have about ourselves, whether they be positive and negative, how they influence our decisions and how they influence our actions. And that is really going to determine how we set up the ways in which we interact with people. So there's three processes that go on. The first one is the understanding of our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, decisions, and actions. That's the interpersonal. The personal is the ways in which we set up ourselves to interact with others, the way that we understand our world and the way that we work within it. And the third is the interaction with people, the interpersonal connections and the interpersonal interactions we have with others. And those two things, the personal and the interpersonal, rely heavily on the intrapersonal work that we do or don't do. Whether we decide that we're going to allow things just happen to us. I had this conversation with a couple of people on Saturday. Very, very good conversation. There are four stages that people go through things, or experiences, not just things, but experiences. Let's be specific. So it has to do 4, or 2, 4, with and because. So are things happening to you? Are they happening for you? Are they happening with you? Or are they happening because of you? And the difference is huge, because things that happen to you is because you believe you have zero control over how you interact with reality and how reality responds to you, believing that the response that reality gives you dictates how you're supposed to move through that world. And it's a very self-victimizing way to go. I think it's dumb, but it's dumb because people give up the belief that they have any causation to what they do. It's not because of them; things happen to them, and the further up that you go from there, so things happen for you. Well, you have some control. It's still believing that the world is conspiring, but the world is conspiring in your favor. Like, there are things that you can learn, or benefits that you can have. There's got to be some reason for this kind of idea, and even that has its own limitations and has its own victimization. Happening with you is a much better way to look at it. It's this idea that yes, things are happening, but you do have some cause, or you do have some skin in the game. There is some reason why you were involved in this. And then the last one, which I think is the most profound, is to come to the realization that things happen because of you. And things happen because of you because there was something you had done, either an action or reaction you committed that created the circumstance and the experience that you now have. And the more that we can come to the understanding that things happen because of us, when we take accountability for our actions, it creates much more mature responses. Now, to that, many people are immature, and that's why a lot of people have the problems that they do, because they don't understand that their decisions, their thoughts, their beliefs, their feelings all create an action, which then has a result. Newton's first law: every action has a corresponding reaction. And this is a law of the world. It always happens this way. Everything that you do is going to have some sort of consequence, big or small. Owning up to the consequence is the only thing that you can really do, and that's going to make anything really happen. The less that you own up to your circumstance, the greater your suffering is going to be, because you don't believe that you had anything to do with it, which means that there's nothing you need to improve. Which again is very short-term thinking, very selfish and very self-centered to believe that there's nothing that you could do that would cause your situation. So, getting back to your question, Mel, true intimacy with the self has to do with the saying of know thyself. It is that discovery of knowing as much about you as you possibly can. Your limitations, your strengths, your potential, your weaknesses, everything, and honoring all of that. That is the greatest way in which you honor yourself, is by honoring everything that makes up who you are, understanding that you aren't going to be great at everything, and that's fine. But if you have this delusion that you're going to be perfectly fine, nothing's going to happen that you don't want it to, and all is hunky-dory, blah, 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 life is going to be hard. It's going to be very hard. And it's going to be hard because you refuse to do what is necessary to learn. And if you aren't learning, you're suffering. So, personally, I take issue with the idea of self-love. because I think the idea of self-love is very self-serving. Because if you're doing things unless you're doing things to improve yourself so that you can improve the ways in which you interact with others, it's very self-serving. If you are doing things to improve yourself in a way that helps to improve the way in which you interact with others, to improve your life and the lives of others, it's being of service. That's what true leadership is. But if what you're doing is for your own happiness, then you've lost you've lost the message. you forgot the instructions, and you aren't playing by the rules that you were given. And again, it's going to cause you suffer. And on that note, I yield the mic.
I'm glad you brought up that last part. For me, if I can summarize it, self-love, and I want to, how can I say this? Self-love is of service to others. It's selflessness. The reason why you're trying to improve yourself is so that you can be a better provider, a better patron, partner, friend, citizen, however you want to label it. In order for me to truly help somebody, I have to know myself. Based on your identifiers, I have to be tapped into all of that. Not for any other reason, but because the way that I might reach someone might be different than you. I can help you bring groceries in to the house or from your car. That's simple. I can hold a door. I can maybe say hello, smile at you. I can maybe anything physical with my hands. That's not really a big deal. But when you're talking about being a leader or giving any type of advice or pouring out information to someone, I really don't think that if you are hurt or in a space where you're restricting yourself from understanding that what you're about to say to the next person has to be unbiased. I cannot give you advice about healthy relationships if I don't understand what they are like. If all of my experiences are bad, but I still have hope in them. So I can say, well, I still think there's good out here, but if it's me, I wouldn't put too much into it. You're probably better off just dealing with random people, keeping it neutral, dating. But see, now I'm kind of doing you a disservice because I'm telling you this based on the fact that I have had a bunch of bad moments with people, and I'm projecting that on you when like that world is a lot broader. This world is way bigger than just me in my experiences. Everybody, it's like saying, it's like saying everybody cooks the same. It's impossible. Everybody's ingredients are different and they hit different because everybody don't put onions in their food. Everybody don't put a lot of sugar in their tea or whatever the case may be. So I think for me, that solitude, that alone time, seeking wisdom from doctrine, being obedient, having discipline, knowing when to be corrected, being able to receive correction. You're not going to know everything. You have to be available. You can't be shut off. You can't have barriers. I cannot go into any space and act as if I got it all figured out. But I'm so comfortable within myself that I can smile as bright as I want without caring if you judging me based on my sense of humor, or you're judging me because I walk a certain way, or you look at me a certain way because of my height or how I dress. I think there's a lot that goes into it, from a superficial aspect to a spiritual aspect. Sydney, you said a lot that I absolutely agreed with. Just me. I don't think self-love is about being selfish. I think the version of it that you're referring to is someone who is just solely focused on everything that they can benefit from building themselves up, but they don't really have no desire to, what's the word, integrate with anybody else's life. It's like, as long as I'm good, I could care less what you got going on. I think real self-love makes you open and available to everybody without any type of biases to it. I yield the mic.
One of the things that you said, Jason, reminded me of a line in one of my poems that I wrote. I have a piece that was written about how sometimes you'll have this life for yourself planned out, but then you turn around and one day it's not what you thought it was going to be. It's not what you wanted. And that one of the things that you said was one of the lines in the poem, or very similar to it. I'll give you a part of it. The future you needed became something different. Frayed connections, distracted pursuits, unfinished business, and forced interaction. Overflowing your vessel, you tape over cracks in your facade to hold in the dirt of your failures. Your yeses crumbled into no's. Every road forked or you turned. Every boat runs aground. Instead of a dream, you turn around and see an existence that is no longer yours. An existence you refuse to own. To you, an existence unknown. This compounding mistake, did it happen to you, or was it because of you? The white light has been humming, but you keep walking, because there has to be something in the darkness. But that, did it happen to you, or was it because of you? I was like, oh, there, you said something like that. It reminded me of this.
One of my favorite quotes is by Mike Tyson, where he says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And it's absolutely true. And sometimes the plans that we have these plans because we think we know what we want. We have no freaking idea what we want. We have no clue. And we tend to surround ourselves with people who lead us to believe that we're thinking the right things, although it hasn't been tested by reality. And the reality test is the most important thing. Now, I will say that the idea of self-love, it can be something that goes beyond self-service, being self-serving. But I tended to see that this is not the case without discipline. Because self-development and self-love are two very different things. Self-development is the process of learning in order to better one's ability to interact with their environment, interact with their world, interact with others. Whereas self-love is more of the self-gratification, the desire for achievement, for one's own recognition. And when you take into account the idea of leadership, the best way to define leadership is to be of service. You can't serve two masters. You can't serve yourself and others. You have to choose. The great thing is that you get to benefit from the fact that you can lead others, that you can be of service. But it's very hard to serve others in a meaningful and lasting way when the focus is the self. Eventually, people understand what your motives really are, and it becomes something that has a ceiling. There's only so far that you can get when your motivations are personal. When your motivations are not personal, it first of all, it requires more discipline, because it feels in the short term like you're giving up things that should be meaningful to you. And it can sometimes feel like you're not being recognized. It can also feel like you're disappearing. But that's that is kind of the paradox of leadership right there. Because and this is talked about in the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, who talked about that the greatest form of leadership is to be able to lead without having to gain recognition. And he said in a passage, he says, the greatest of leadership is when the soldiers get it done, they say they did it themselves. And this is one of the best forms of leadership, the ability to lead without having to be directly influenced, to know that your influence is felt even when you aren't there. That is real leadership. The ability to have influence over others without you needing to be a constant presence. Many people don't understand that because there's this anxiety where if I'm not there, I'll disappear. Well, that just means you didn't set up your leadership systems right. you didn't do what was really important to make sure that you were memorable, that people respected you. What you set up was a system where people were probably more intimidated by you, or they got something from you just enough and were paying attention to you because they got something from you. But as soon as you weren't there, they decided that something else would be more beneficial. Real leadership, real influence is that force of, even when the leader isn't there, our motivations are aligned with the leaders. And we will work tirelessly to make sure that it is done because we know that is the best way. And so it becomes a buy-in, a personal buy-in for the way that things need to be. And this is very similar to how parents raise children. And we all know, at least the three of us here know, that adults are nothing more than grown-ass children. And they know a little more, they have a little more agency-ish, but they act pretty much the same as they did when they were kids. And they resort back to prior training. One of the laws of human behavior is that people are governed by childhood reward and punishment. And so that's going to carry over. The only way that gets overridden is if current reward outweighs previous punishment. And if it can be something that is done over and over again, where the gratification of that reward creates belonging, where they can change their identity from what they knew to what they are doing now. It's not easy, but it's doable. I know this because I've done it myself. So, just to wrap things up, there's a difference between self-love and leadership. Yes. So yeah, well, good NCO and officer doctrine, because anyone who's in the military, I think Greg and I both are veterans. Anyone who's in the military knows that there are two pillars of leadership, especially in the U.S. military, where you've got the officers and you've got the NCOs. The officers are responsible for the plan. The NCOs are responsible for the actions. And both are absolutely necessary. Not one can do both jobs, at least not well. And so it's the exact same thing with understanding how people work. There's this idea that when you have two parents that are able to do two things, one that has a plan, one that develops the people, or that develops that ensures the proper action, you get good results. And if you don't have good results, then aligning yourself with something that can help you build those good results is the next best alternative. Being able to align yourself with some form of leadership that you can say, this is what I've been lacking. This is what's going to make me feel like I belong. This is what my new identity is. But we have to give up this idea of who we think that we are. And the point that I'm trying to make, it may seem like I'm kind of rabbit trailing here, but I'm really not. It actually does come back on itself. The point that I'm trying to make is when you are acting in a way that is greater than you, it is going to be something that you can benefit from as well, but it takes more discipline. It takes the ability of you moving in a certain direction over and over and over again, because you know you know what the goal is, you know what right looks like. And while being self-serving can be more rewarding short term, there's nowhere for it to go after a certain point. And so that's the difference that I would see between self-love and being of service. Being of service has much more potential, much greater reward than self-love. And after all of that long windbagging, I yield the mic.
Which I follow up with a question. Where would indulgence fall in? I've heard people say before, especially the girly crowd, that self-care is self-love, which I don't put very much stock in. I'm just curious what your take is. Where do you think indulgence would fall? Would that even be on that spectrum, or would that be related to more so
the best answer is it depends. It depends on how you're using it. Again, discipline is key. So indulgence itself isn't a problem. The problem is when and how it's used. If it is used to just create self-reward, then yes, it's self-serving. If it is used as a way of being able to enjoy a comfort, like take a knee basically before you continue on, that's just basically taking time for yourself, recouping, and then moving forward. But it's not the same thing. The idea is, what is your goal? Is your goal just the immediate gratification, or is it the longer term goal that you have? You can have some self-gratification, but that is not the goal. The goal is what you are working towards. And this requires a tireless amount of discipline and dedication. It requires a passion to want to go through a hard life early on to enjoy something later on. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Especially, basically my takeaway was using indulgence more as a tool rather than a lifestyle, which many people seem to be doing these days. Is indulgence is a lifestyle in 50 different areas. They have the most indulgent everything and can't even. I think that's one of the things that can distract people from their true self, is the over indulgence, because it doesn't just exist around physical possessions, even though it does. But it's also linked with too many goals. I just recently listened to, oh my God, what is his name? He's a psychologist that has written a couple books on like productivity, and Cal Newport, I think. He was talking about having too many interests and how that can be dangerous, especially for somebody that's high energy, because people generally, the human mind likes to have strong interests, but select few of them. Like, it does not like to have 1,000 different things that it has to think of and manage all the time, because it's extremely overwhelming for the brain to try and like keep track of everything. Where was I going with this? That somebody with a stronger sense of self is going to be able to minimize the external distractions much better than somebody that has no understanding of where their place is. Like, the kind of, to use what you're talking about, your sense of service. That was something that that's how the Catholic Church, at least at my school, framed your purpose is what is going to be your service to others? Like, how are you going to give back to the people around you? And I think once somebody is able to identify their like internal service, like where they kind of want to go, and how they want to use their talents, their efforts, their energies, their mental capacity, that's when they're able to excise everything else that doesn't matter. And I've noticed this across the board with a lot of, like, I love to watch YouTubers that preach about minimalism, but I also like to explore the alternate lifestyles to understand the psychology that contributes to how people are living and why we have so many like bizarre lifestyles that exist today and ways of thinking. And that's something that I've noticed, is the people that are able to par down their life, whether it's physical or entirely like everything, it's because they have a very, very strong internal sense of purpose. They know who they're there to serve. They know who they are inside. They know who their community is. They know what's important to them, and everything else they're able to be like, nope, doesn't matter. I don't care about it. Like, they're able to be flexible. Like, they can still dabble and try different things. Like, they're not like, oh, I'm not going to do anything else except this one thing because this is my thing. But they're not going to be dragged by the tides of like, oh, well, everyone's doing this, or oh, this job is is popular right now, and so I think that's something that I've just noticed in people, is that the stronger your sense of self, the stronger your sense of service is able to be, because you're able to actually like put your energies into where and how you actually want to serve. You have that understanding of how your skill set, your unique characteristics can benefit other people. So I think that might be another reason why we have so many people that are aimless today, is there's endless options of what you could do, endless things out there of like ways you could get skills for things, and ways you can get jobs, different ways you can work, different companies, different type, like there's options galore. And I think a lot of people are so distracted by all of these things out there that they haven't gotten the chance to actually explore themselves. I think school is one of those things that kind of does that disservice, or at least the traditional public school overworked teachers trying to manage a classroom of 35 kids that have no discipline to begin with. Those kids have no opportunity to explore who they are and what they're good at unless they have additional support from their parents or other people, or they have a really, really freaking good teacher that is somehow able to work with the resources that she probably doesn't even have. we don't have generations of kids growing up to understand deeply who they are and what their attributes are. They see attributes of other people, of famous people, and what they think they want to be, but it's not actually linked to who they are underneath. It's just an attraction to the traditional, like, you could be rich, famous, sexy, whatever, and get whatever you want and have all the girls and whatever. It's just a lie, basically. This big, you can be everything. But it's those people that have no sense of self, that don't have that internal sense of direction. Again, like I said, they're more likely to fall for that stuff. I think I think they really go hand in hand. Like you really have to kind of discover both for yourself. And it takes a community really to understand that. You can't understand yourself, and you can't understand your position of, I'm not sure how to word it, but like, you can't really develop in a vacuum. You have to have the community around you to also understand who you are, because first of all, humans were never meant to be individualistic creatures anyways. We've always been colonial animals. But your sense of self is developed by your relationships with other people, by the people that you interact with and create families with, are friends with, and who you rely on for everything, resources, intellect, everything. And so I think that's another reason why our sense of self, our sense of service has kind of been eroded in this society, because in the limitless options, we also have limitless options of who we can partner up with and who we can be in the community with. And it's making a lot of people cut off the natural community members. Think like people no longer consider their neighbors their community. They no longer consider the local shopkeepers and storefronts to be their community members. But this makes us very vulnerable, especially in times of extreme financial difficulty, like if there's weather issues, a collapse of services. We need to have these connections, and we kind of have a society that's disconnected in every sense of the word, disconnected from themselves, disconnected from their community, disconnected from their social circuits, and disconnected from our entire governing system. And I really think that it kind of stems to this lack of identity. This isn't reinforced anymore. I know this is kind of broad because I don't know all of the individual tribes and their traditions, but I know a lot of native tribes had a system for kind of discovering what that person's attribute would be. They had different tests and disguised as play that they'd put kids through to help them discover what their strengths and weaknesses were, to help them discover what they needed to work on, and where they could possibly be placed within the tribe, what uses they could possibly have. We don't really do that with our kids anymore. Like some people do, but yeah, we don't work with kids anymore to help them discover who they are. We just kind of like shoo them off, like go play, go find yourself, go figure out something to do, entertain yourself. And instead they're fed the internet, they're fed these shows, and so they grow up not understanding who they are at all and where their place is. So yeah, that's my take.
So one thing that came through was that a big theme of what you're talking about was a lack of definite purpose. Something that both Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie both talked about at length. In fact, one of my favorite books that I read probably every couple of years is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, which talks about the idea of why definite purpose is so important and the dangers of not having one. It was written in the 1940s before the U.S. The 1930s before the U.S. got involved in World War II, between the Great Depression and World War II, and it also is a timeless work. It's something that's very relevant for today. What I will say is I don't believe it is the multitude of options that are open to us that's the problem. I think that the multitude of options is actually a benefit. What I think is the problem is that there is no way of helping people understand what is probable versus what is possible. And no discernment there. There's no real understanding of if you want this to be probable, this is what you have to do. If this is what you want your life to be, this is the trajectory you have to have. That doesn't exist. It's like, okay, well, this is what your father did, so this is what's expected of you. I mean, even that isn't done anymore. And that was a much better path than what we have now, which is complete chaos. People having to figure it out on their own. But you're right. We need to get back to a point where there is a sense of leadership. And while many tribes did have a way of being able to understand who was good at what, it was very basic. You're either a hunter-gatherer, you're going to be focused on protection, focused on cultivation, focused on growing the tribe or whatever. Everyone's going to have a role, and it's going to be based on how you interact in certain ways with others. It was very simple. And it seems like things are a little bit more far-fetched, but that's only because technology has kind of made information so much more without any kind of understanding as to what is going to be important to focus on right now. And I think that's laughable at best. But yeah, I do see where you're coming from, Sydney, and you do raise some good points. The thing that I would say is that it is a lack of definite purpose and the lack of understanding what is probable and the creation of a plan, the lack of planning. These three things are the biggest problems. I yield them. Now you finally got a turn to speak.
I wanted to respond to something that you asked earlier. Actually, first, let me say everything that y'all I agree with, from the parents and all the way down to surfing being different than leadership and everything else that you expressed. My pushback, well, I just say is a slight nudge, is it was more about the self-love thing being a self-serving type of attitude. I think the reason why I feel is because with self-love, nobody can screw you over. With self-love, you have boundaries. You know what type of man or woman you want to be, what type of characteristics that you want in other people around you. And by you doing the things that you need to do to make sure that you minimize I don't see that as a 1000% also in addition, you to be a leader or to be any type of role model of any sort, you have to love yourself. How can you produce anything for anybody else? For the last few minutes, Sydney expressed explicitly that parents don't know how to raise their children. They don't get involved in the activities. They don't sit down at the table no more. They don't talk to them. And it's a reflection of how they grew up. What you say earlier, adults act as if they in school, they didn't get rid of or put down the toys and put down all the petty little things that came with being a kid. They still moving like they are 12, 15 years old, and they just pass it along to the children. I think, and it's just my opinion, I'm not saying 100% that you're inaccurate, because I do see your point of view when you say that self love can be selfish, because it's misinterpreted to me. I think that, oh, I'm just gonna buy everything for me, or I'm just gonna think about my birthday, or I'm just gonna think about how I want my love language to be expressed. I'm just going to think about how I am supposed to articulate my gratitude to me. I'm not going to really be too concerned about your success. I'm not going to be too concerned about your stress or anything. I'm just going to be worried about me. That's an entirely different thing versus someone who goes to church, reads the Bible. They know you can't be biased. You can turn the other cheek. You're not weak for walking away from confrontations. This, that, the third is just, I think, like there's a huge mirror it looks like it's like a funhouse mirror. You got the same person standing there, but it's completely two different shapes at the same time. And I don't know if I would trust somebody who didn't love themselves enough to where they wouldn't put others before them if necessary. If they didn't love themselves enough to be corrected if necessary. And it's sad trying to explain it. I think that part is very confusing, and it probably sounds confusing to a lot of people with what I'm saying, because it might sound like I'm going against what Jason is saying. I'm not necessarily going against what he's saying. What I'm saying is, like, me personally, I can't love anybody properly if I don't love myself properly. That's why I say self-love isn't directly tied to self-service. Because how am I supposed to do for you when I can't even properly do for myself? I don't know how to treat myself. I don't know how to be away from you. I don't know how to leave you alone for 5 minutes. I got to be on call with you every 20 minutes or so, calling your phone, texting your phone. I'm so dependent on hearing from you. I got to be constantly in your face. I need you to reassure me every 20, 30, 40 hours. And no, that's a huge turnoff. Nobody wants to be smothered. I don't know anybody who likes to be smothered. And I can say that with confidence, because I used to smother people. I used to think that and that came from me not loving myself. I always thought, if I over poured into them, if I over listened to them, if I over talked to them, if I over sent them cards and I overdid this and that would make them give me what I wanted for myself, when I should have been doing what I was doing for them for myself first. So self-love absolutely is important. It's not selfish. it's putting you in a position to increase the odds of being treated better by the people that you decide to have in your life at some point. That's pretty much all I wanted to touch on. But like as far as everything else, I think y'all smashed it for real. I don't really have nothing about anything else. I actually absolutely agree with everything that y'all said.
I am going to challenge that perspective in one way. And that is how when you first started, you talked about how self-love means that no one's going to mess with you.
Have something to them that makes their declaration.
And
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, all right, I'm gonna say this part. If y'all want to go around and say your, I thought I muted. Go ahead.
The only thing that I'm going to say is the idea of
one more. I'll give you one more example of what I'm talking about.
The lag is real, man.
It's a little lag. That's probably why we keep on catching.
Yeah. So the only thing that I would say is that it is.
All right, let me get this out real quick, and then I'll give it back to you, and then we straight. I just want to give one more.
How dare you?
Hey, it's probably on me, folks. I got an outdated laptop, man, so I have the delays. My apologies. All I want to say, when you have self-love, you have boundaries, you have principles, you have morals. Into a room and not be the richest person in the room and still have all the confidence of one. You can be around liars and not ever deal with them or associate with them. You don't get finessed by people who are good at manipulating. When you have self-love, you know how to have a conversation with someone without any judgment, without any bias. You're fair. You tell them the truth like it is. You're open to suggestions. You're open to receiving critique. You're open to being wrong. You're open to being corrected. That's it. You got it.
So I think I would classify this as self-worth rather than self-love. And maybe people see it as being the same thing. Self-worth is the idea, for me anyway, that you have intrinsic worth, knowing that no one can take away from. However, when that worth becomes its own self-defining principle, that's where it becomes a problem. When you see that you have worth and you interact with others with the knowledge you have worth, and you demand that people see you as worth simply because you are a human being and you deserve the respect of being human, there's nothing wrong with that. The moment you go above and beyond that, there's a problem, because no one is deserving of anything more than to be treated with respect of being human. Everything else is privilege. It is privilege based on the interaction, based on the way that others see you and that others interact with you. So it's the idea of understanding that you are a human being, and the boundaries that you create have to do with the fact that I'm going to be treated with respect because you and I are both human, and I will be given the same respect that you give yourself. And if you don't give yourself the respect, it's fine. I will show you how to do that. And it's that confidence, that sense of, some people call it a ridiculous amount of confidence that comes from the sense of knowing that you have worth because you are human. And humans, 100% of meaningful interactions happen from human to human. No other way creates the kind of intense and gratifying interactions that you can have other than from another human being. And so to demand that you be treated with the same respect that others would treat anyone else simply because you are human is not far-fetched. It is deserved. So as far as self-love, that's what I would define it as. It is being given the respect because you are a human being. Anything else beyond that is a privilege.
I believe.
Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was just about to say. I believe you had a poem. I don't know if you wanted to add on to it, but I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna turn it over to you and let you do your thing.
Okay. I thought this one would be fitting. I wrote it about being self-absorbed. It's called Hiding Amongst Yourself. Insensitive existence, filled to the brim with the intoxicating brew of self. The thick syrup of concentrated personality coats the senses with faux affection, drowning connections in personal preference and projected indifference, perceived perfection oozing pride in deflecting rejection, in the hopes of catching attention. You act for yourself and in spite of yourself. You seek your own peace, blocking windows, locking doors, living in the comfort of yourself. You steep with all you achieve, believe, breathe, regurgitating everything you deem meaningful onto the followers, the unwillings, the soft sensitives, the offended, who barely know you. Yet, your tantalizing facts and figures, the stories you love most, the things you owned and did, the receipts, the proof, the validation, the log of yourself, your excitement and passion, thrown at others like eggs. Indulgent conversation settling like butter, like oil and water. You self-separate, an immiscible mixture, demanding to be illustrious, demanding that they know, through the prattling prose, that you are better than everyone. Though they don't retort, faces don't contort. As they continue to ignore it, you continue to report on yourself, to yourself, through others' ears. Obey thyself, never mind them. You try to lie, you try to cry, try to wile, yet the tiny fissures, pointed out by the wise, pried open by denial, designed for your revival, threateningly leak your slivers of reality, exposing that deep fragility that you tried to hide, revealing the deep self, the muffled embers just waiting to alight. Don't fight, for ego may be your home, but ego can never be your heaven.
That's awesome. That's a great poem.
Thank you.
I have to get going because I have to make dinner. But this is great.
My sound. Right on. Glad to have you back up, bro. Sydney, pleasure as usual. Beautiful piece.
Thank you.
Great discussion. Enjoy the rest of your night, bro. Sydney, enjoy the rest of your evening. And everybody that's watching, appreciate you for tapping in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to the channel. Tap in with us. We're gonna be back tomorrow. I didn't forget this time. I'm gonna make sure that is ready for us. It's gonna be a goodie. So until next time, we'll be signing out. Y'all be easy.
See you next Tuesday and see you tomorrow.
Later.
Bye.